Hello guys, welcome back to AJ Script Media. It's been a while since my last video because I've been busy for the last 3 months. And now I am excited to continue discussing the OWL framework from Odoo. In my previous tutorial, we built a to-do list app using a static server like a plain JavaScript, HTML, and CSS file only. But now, we will be implementing it directly in Odoo ERP system. Let me show you the module that we will be creating. By the way, in this tutorial, we will be using the latest version, which is 16 at the time of this recording. We will not go through the setup and installation, so I suggest you do it before moving on to this tutorial so that we can focus more on OWL framework. So I created a new module, OWL tutorial, and added it into the main menu. We have here two menus, to-do list and to-do list OWL. The first one is used to do the Odoo default functionalities, and the second one is the one we are interested in, which we will be creating from scratch. As you already know, once we create a new model, we automatically have the add, edit, delete, and search functionalities. But what if you have a custom requirement or you want to be clever and implement your own code, right? At first, it may sound difficult, but once you learn it by checking this tutorial, of course, you will notice that you can implement it in less than 80 lines of code. Now let's try to add a new task. Let's add some color. Save changes. It's working fine. Let's see if it's also showing in the default Odoo. Let's try to add new here. Let's add some color and save. Let's see if it will show in our own app. Okay, it is showing. Let's try to edit this task and change the color. Save changes. Let's try to edit this task and let's make it completed. Okay, it's working fine. Let's try to search task 3. It's working fine. And finally, let's delete. As you can see, all the functionalities are working fine. So what are we waiting for? Let's dive in and start creating. So here is our working project directory. Under community folder is the location of Odoo version 16, and we have our own virtual environment, and I'm using Python 3.9. And we have OWL tutorial folder, which will be the location of our custom add-ons and our Odoo configuration. I will be using PyCharm as my IDE, and I have installed the latest version, PyCharm 2023.1 Community Edition. You may notice that the UI changed. It's because I enabled new UI, which is in beta mode. Just click this checkbox and restart your PyCharm. One thing I love here is the increased contrast. So I have already imported our working directory, which is OWL tutorial. So the first thing we need to do is to add our Odoo configuration. Let's create a new file and name it odoo.conf. By the way, I am using Postgres SQL version 15. And for testing purposes, I just created the same username and DB password, and I added DB filter and then community version 16 add-ons path and HTTP port 8069. Next thing we need to do is to edit our PyCharm configuration. Let's click add new and choose Python. Let's name it Odoo. And our script path, we need to select community folder and select Odoo bin. And then the parameters we will add later. Here we need to select our Python interpreter as version 16_env. And then let's change our working directory. It should be OWL tutorial. Apply and click OK. Then now, let's copy the absolute path of our Odoo configuration. Let's edit the configuration again and let's add our parameters, wherein the configuration will be located in this location. Click Apply and click OK. And then let's start. Let's open our browser. And then let's type localhost 8069 And here you go. It is working fine. Let's start creating our database. Type our master password, which is 12345. Database name all16. Make sure to add all16 because we added a DB filter. And email, this will be your username. Let's make it admin, password admin, and then create database. Now database has been created. Let's use the username and password we entered before. Click login. And now we successfully installed Odoo 16, and we can see here all the applications from Odoo. But we will not activate any of these because we will be creating our own module and our own model. Inside custom add-ons folder, actually we need to rename it. It should be custom add-ons. We need to create a new directory and name it all, which will be the name of our module. And inside that, let's create the two basic files for Odoo module, which is init.py and manifest.py. For the manifest file, I'll just copy and paste it. And let's remove the warning. So the name will be all tutorial version 1.0 and sequence -1 because I want it to be the first on the list, so I don't need to search every time I want to upgrade it. And there will be only one dependency, which is base. We don't have data for now, installable, and application will be true. And our assets, backend and frontend. Actually, we don't need this, so let's remove. And before we will restart Odoo, let's copy the absolute path of our custom add-ons and add it in our Odoo configuration. Now, let's restart Odoo. In order for our Odoo custom add-ons to show, we need to activate debug mode. Either you install Odoo Debug Chrome extension or there's a shortcut if you hit Command K if you're using Mac, and let's type debug and hit enter. Let's click update app list and then let's click again main apps. As you can see, all tutorial is already showing here, so we can activate it immediately. Now let's quickly create a new model by adding these three folders: models, security, and lastly views. And inside models, let's create two files, init.py and our model, which is todo_list.py. For these files, I'll just copy and paste the codes because I want to focus more on our old app. So here I created a new model, all the to-do list, and I have added three fields: name, completed, and color. We need to add this in init file. And don't forget also to add it in the main init file. Next is we need to create a view. Let's type Odoo and data. So from here, we need to add tree view and then form view. And then we need an action and then a menu. So action here is needed for this two form view to show. And this action is needed when our menu will be clicked. Okay, let's define our tree view. So from here, I added the three fields: name, color, and completed. Next, let's define the form view. Now, in order for these two views to show, we need to add an action. And then lastly, we need a menu. We can add it here. So this will be the main menu. If you want to add sub-menus, just do the same. And don't forget to add a closing tag here. And instead of all tutorial, we need to add to-do list. And let's add whole to-do list. But here in this menu, we need to add an action so that our form view and tree view will show for our model all the to-do list. One last thing, we need to add a security so that this sub-menu will show. So under security, let's create a new file, ir.model.access.csv. As you can see, I added all access, read, write, create, and unlink. For our base.group user, base.group user is equivalent to employee user, which means all internal user will have access to it. And don't forget to add these files in our manifest. First, we need to add security, ir.model.access.csv, and our view to do list.xml. Let's restart, and then let's upgrade our module. It's a spelling mistake, CSV. Since I changed the manifest file, I need to restart Odoo. Let's do it again. So now our model is showing. In the main menu, we have all tutorial and we have the submenu to-do list. Let's try to add some records. Click new and let's add some tasks. Save. Save. Let's go back and then let's edit the second one. Okay, it's working fine. Let's try to search. And finally, delete. Okay, I think now we're ready to implement all to this model. To give you a better idea, I will install one module, which is discuss. I want to install this since this module is built using OWL. So let's go to app and search discuss. Let's activate it. Unlike Odoo default tree view and form view, discuss module requires a different view. That's why they need to create a custom view for this. Since we already know how to define a menu, why don't we search discuss in PyCharm and check how this menu was triggered? Press Command-Shift-F on your keyboard to show Find in Files window, and let's type discuss and change the file mask to XML, and let's choose directory and select under community add-ons. To lessen the result, let's click match case and words. So in the result, we are interested in a menu item. In the same file, mail_menus.xml, we have two. And I believe this is the one because usually main menu has a web icon. And this one is under technical discuss. So let's open the first one. This menu is connected to an action. Let's also search this action. So this client action, which means this is connected to a JavaScript file. And the name of that action is mail action discuss. We need also to search this, but we need to change the file type as JS. And I believe this is the correct one. As you can see, it is using an ES6 syntax and it is importing the registry. And under registry, we are adding a key value pair under actions. To give you a quick overview about registry in Odoo, it is simply a key value pair and we can also create our own registry, but Odoo already provided different registry in different categories. Say for example, we have here a client actions which is connected to ir.actions model, and we have services. It is a long-lived piece of code that provides a feature, one of which that we will be using in this tutorial will be ORM, so that we can simply add, edit, delete records in the database. And there are other categories, but in this tutorial, we will be focusing more on actions and services. So this mail action discuss is mapped to this component. Let's see at the top where it was important. As you can see under mail module and components discuss container. So let's try to open this. And okay, this is the correct file. Let's open. It is using an old component. We have the setup. There are some methods. And finally, a template has been defined, which is mail.discuss container. It is an external template. So let's also find this and change the file type as XML. Now that we know how the discuss module has been created, let's start implementing OWL into our model. Let's start by creating a new static folder under OWL module. And inside this folder, let's create a new directory. All components should be stored in the source location so other modules can import them easily. Inside this folder, let's create components folder. And inside this folder, let's create our first component, which is to-do list. And inside this folder, let's create 3 files: to-do list.js, to-do list.xml for our template, and lastly, to-do list.scss for our styles. To add these assets, let's go into our manifest file, and under assets, let's add these 3 files, and we can use glab patterns. This is beneficial if you have many components. Okay, let's type our module all, and then static source components, and we will use glab patterns here, and we will import all.js file type. Let's duplicate, and let's do the same for the XML file and the SCSS. Let's go under main.js. We need to import registry, and then we need to add an actions, and let's rename it to all that action to do list.js, so that we will know that this is a JavaScript. And then we need to create an all component. So let's go under discuss container. Let's import all component, and we need to create a new class which extends the component, and let's rename it as all to-do list. Okay, we can have setup method here, and then we can have a simple state value is equal to 1. We need to import use state from all, and then lastly we need to add a template for our component. So we can easily do that by adding template is equal to the name of our template. Let's say all that to-do list. So we need to create our template. Let's copy the same thing here, and inside to-do list.xml, let's paste it, and instead of mail.discuss container, we need to copy the one we added here, and then we need to replace this. Let's have an h2 element, and let's type all to-do list, and then we can simply add escape, and we can pass our state that value. Let's check if everything's fine. Here we missed something. We need to add this code so that Odoo will know that this JavaScript file is an ES6 syntax and it is using all component. Now let's go back. We need to add this client action into our views. Let's copy and paste, and let's rename this to action all to-do list JS, and the name will be to-do list all, and the tag will be the one we added in our to-do list.js, which is all the to-do list. We don't need params here. And then now we can create a new submenu, to-do list all, and the ID, let's just add JS at the end, and the action will be the client action we just added. Let's double check. We did not add the correct component here. Okay, let's restart. And then let's go to apps and upgrade our module. Now let's go to all tutorial. Let's see what's the issue. Oh, sorry, I added the wrong one. I added the template. So I need to replace it, and then let's upgrade again. Hopefully it will work now. I added R here. Sorry guys. Let's upgrade again. There you go guys. Now it's working fine. If I will update this and refresh, okay, it's updating. Now let's build the user interface. Now that our design has been completed, let's now add the functionalities. First, we need to add the list of tasks, but for now, we will make it as static. So under our component, we need to create task list, and into our template, under table, let's add T for each, and we can access the state that we added, and T as task. And here, like JSX syntax, if you are using React.js, we also need in web template. We need to add task for now. And let's see if we will have 3 items on the table. Let's refresh. It's working. Now we can add objects into our component. We need to add an ID and a task name. Let's add 2 more. Since we already have an ID, we can make the key as task.id. And then the label, we can add a new span, task name. Let's try. Now I'm having the 3 tasks. Now I need to add the color. Let's update our template. Under color, we can access it by using the attribute and then the value task.color. Let's refresh. Now it's working. Next, let's work on the completed. So we need to add a new key, completed, true or false. So under the checkbox, we need to add the attribute and it will be checked. And let's access the task that completed. Let's refresh. Okay, it's working. But now we need to work on the label. We need to add the attribute also here. And let's add the task ID. And the ID of this checkbox, we need also to do the same. Okay, now every task that has been completed, there should be a line through text style. So we need to add the attribute here with function, class. This class will only show if the task has been completed. Let's refresh. Okay, now it's working. If we edit our state and refresh again, you can see that it's working fine. Now, instead of using static task list, we will now proceed in getting the data from our database. But in order to do that, we need to use a service by importing use service first. Create ORM is equal to use service ORM. So using this, we can use the same method like we are using in Python, like search, create, write, and unlink. And then we need to add 1 lifecycle hooks in all on will start, so that before the component will render, we will get first the data that will be used in our component. So let's add on will start. It should be added in the setup method. This OR method will return a promise. That's why we need to add a sync await function. We will edit our state, the task list, by calling this ORM method. I will use search read because I will only need some fields that I want. The first parameter will be the name of our model, which will be all the to-do list. The next thing will be the domain. We don't need a domain because we need to get all the records. And then lastly, the fields you want to get. So I want to get the name, color, and completed. And lastly, we need to remove our static task. Let's go back to the browser and refresh. If we go back to to-do list and compare it, you can see that it is getting the correct record. if you will create a new, same thing it's showing here. We can still improve this code by separating this ORM method into a new function, get all task. Let's copy and paste, and let's call that function. And we can add model here and transfer this and replace it. The good thing here is every time you create a new task or delete a task, you can just call this function and it will automatically refresh the data. Now let's move on to add and edit functionality. So let's go back into our component. And for this, we need to add few things. First is we need a new state task, which is used to map the form inputs in our model. We have the name, the color, and completed. We can have initial state as red color and completed as false. And we also need isEdit, which is by default false. We will be using this because our model is connected to two functionalities, new and then edit. I need to add a new state also, the active ID, and by default will be false. And then we need three methods here, one for adding the task, one for editing the task, and one for saving the task in the database. Since it needs an ORM method, we need to add async save task. Then we will map our task state in our template. So let's go down into our model. First will be the task name. We need to add the model, then add our state, the task, that name. Using this T model, it will automatically update the state. Normally, if you're using React, we need to use onChange event, but here using T model, it will automatically map the values in our state. And then we need to add the add value here. And the same thing, it will be our state, task, that name. Same thing in color, T model, state, that task, that color, T add value, state, that task, that color. And lastly, in our checkbox, state, that task, that completed. And here, instead of value, we need to add T add check, state, that task, that completed. Now let's check if it's working. So if I will save the task, let's console lang this that state that task. And to connect this method in our template, let's go into our save button, add T on click, save task. So this save task will be the same in our component method. Let's open inspector and refresh the page. I forget add comma here. Let's refresh again. Okay, it's working fine. So let's open the model and save changes. You will see the name, the color, and the completed. If I will change it, it's working fine also. Now let's go and proceed saving the task in the database. We can achieve that by calling the create method. The first parameter will be the model, and next will be the fields that you want to add. And it needs to be stored in a list. We want to add the name, the color, and completed. And the name will be the active state. Let's refresh the page. Let's create a new task. Save changes. If the record has been saved, let's go to to-do list. Okay, I have the new task here. It's working fine, but now we need to refresh every time we save the record. We can simply do that by calling this method, getAllTasks. Don't forget to add a wait here. Let's try again. Task 5, task 6. As you can see, it is automatically refreshing. If we check in to-do list, it's also showing here. But we can still reduce the code since our task state already have the same fields that we want to add in the database. So we don't need to add each of these. We can just add this, that state, that task. Provided you will not add any fields here that's not in the database. Now let's do edit functionality. So if I will click edit here, I should have the task that I want to edit. To solve that, since we already have is edit state, let's go in edit task. I need to edit the state is edit is equal to true. And I need to update our task state so that it will automatically update it also in our model. We need to have a parameter task. Before we do that, let's console log the task. And this edit task we need to add in our edit button in our template. But we cannot simply do this because we need to pass the active ID that we want to edit. We need to add a function here. We will pass the active task. But again, this will not work if you will not add this in our function. This is needed so that all the function in our component, all the state will still be added. Otherwise, this will not work. If I will edit this task, okay, there's no error. Task 6, correct. Since we already have the active task, we can now pass it in our state. Click edit. Okay. We can actually make this simple by using rest parameter function. We don't need to type every fields. Since our task state only have name, color, and completed. The next thing now is to save it into the database. We need to set the active ID to the active task ID, which will be used in our save task. This function will work if this.state, this edit is false, which means we are creating data. Else, we need to update the active task. So we can simply use write function here, and instead of the task, add the active ID. Next, add our task state. Let's see if it will work. Let's refresh. Let's edit the last one. Okay, it's working fine. Add and edit are working fine now. But we have issue here because if I will edit a task and I will create a new record, the form inputs are not resetting. In order to do that, we need to create a new method, reset form, and this method will simply make the task go back to its initial state. And when we click add task, we need to call this function and reverse this method. And finally, we need to add this task in our template, T on click and add task. Let's try if it's working fine. Let's edit the task and create a new record. Now it's working fine. Now let's do the delete function. Let's add a sync because It needs an ORM method. Same thing in editing task. We need to add the active task. And instead of create, we need to use unlink. We need to access the parameters we added here and the ID. So let's copy this method, and in our template, let's go under delete button, copy the same thing in edit, and instead of edit task, let's make it delete task. And of course, we need to get all the tasks again. Let's try to delete. Let's see if it's also deleted in to-do list. It's working fine. Now let's do the search functionality. We can just simply get the same thing in our get all task. Name it as search task. Here we need to add a domain. Unlike Python code that we will use parentheses, here we need to add square brackets. I want to search by name, and the operator will be I like, so that either small case or uppercase, and then the text that are added in our search box. In order to get the value of search input, we need to use useref from OWL, and we can store it. Let's say search input is equal to useref search input. Let's copy this and add it in our template by using tref is equal to search input. And in our search task method, we store it in text is equal to this that search input that el that value. Let's try to console log text. Now we need to add this in our template search button. Let's try if it will work. I misspelled useref. It should be useref, not ref. Let's try to search new task. Click search. It's working fine. How about task 5? Okay, but we don't want to click search button every time we want to search, right? We can actually add an event directly in our search box by adding t on keyApp is equal to search tasks. So now after typing, it will automatically give me the result. Next, let's do the toggle task. If I will uncheck this strike through should be removed also, but now it's not working. This is simply an edit task method. Create toggle task method. And here we need to add the parameter task. This will be the ID. And the field, I want only to edit completed field. So let's go back into our template, and under the checkbox, we need to add t on click event. Same thing we did in edit task, and we will pass the active task. And in order to get the values of our current input, we need to add e here, which means the event, and pass it as a parameter. So now in our function, we need to add e here, which means the event, that target, then whatever the object you want to access. You want to access if checkbox is checked or not. After that, let's refresh our task list. And let's see if it will work. If I will uncheck this, the strike 2 was removed. And let's check if it's updating also in our to-do list. It's working fine. If I will uncheck this, it's working fine. Lastly, we can do the same thing in the color. Let's just copy and let's name it update color. And instead of completed, let's change color. Instead of check, we need to add the value here. Let's copy the same and paste it in our color input and change it to update color. But instead of click, we need to replace it with change. Now let's try to change the color. Let's make it green. Let's see if it's also changed in to-do list. It's working fine. And also we need to change it from here and make it blue. And let's see if it also changed in our to-do list all. As you can see guys, it's working fine. So that's it guys. Thank you for watching this tutorial. If you like it, please hit like and subscribe. See you on my next tutorial.